Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. And thank you for joining us today from around the globe for our test automation webinar. My name is Angus Cowan, and I'm the Chief Commercial Officer and Managing Partner for North America at the Next 365 Group. We have a full agenda over the next 30 minutes. I'm joined today by Michael Peterson, our CTO for North America, who will be leading today's discussion on test automation. Although our session is only 30 minutes, we want it to be interactive. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation. I'll be monitoring the chat and the Q&A panel. And Michael and I will stay online after the session if there are any additional questions we don't get to during the allotted time. If you need to leave at the 30-minute mark, don't worry. On request, we can make the webinar recording available afterwards. But before handing things over to Michael, I'd like to spend a few minutes providing an overview of the Next 365 Group, if I could just beg your patience. Michael, if you could just go to the next slide. At Next 365, we provide independent advisory services and senior specialist expertise across the entire Dynamics 365 journey. We work as an embedded extension of our clients' teams, helping organizations either build their own internal Dynamics 365 capabilities or engage as an implementation partner for the business, technical, and functional delivery of Dynamics 365. Regardless of where an organization in its transformation journey, our goal is the same: to help clients strengthen their capabilities, reduce risk, and achieve better business outcomes. Our services span the full Dynamics 365 lifecycle, from preparing organizations for a successful transformation, to drive organizational change, to managing and executing implementations, and increasingly helping clients continuously improve after go live. This is an area where we are seeing significant demand from clients. As Microsoft continues to innovate across Dynamics 365, Power Platform, Fabric, Copilot, and AI, organizations are looking for ways to maximize value from their investments and realize ongoing business benefits. As many of you have experienced firsthand, successful transformation is ultimately about people. Every client wants confidence that they have the best team supporting their transformation. At Next 365, our advisors, program leaders, architect, senior functional specialists bring extensive hands-on experience from both local and global Dynamics 365 programs. Our goal is really to ensure that every client that we have is a reference customer. Michael, if you could just slip to the next slide. And finally, today, Next 365 has offices across 9 countries and continues to expand internationally. We have the ability to support clients wherever their business operates. This allows us to combine local market knowledge with global experience across ERP, CRM, Power Platform, data, and the ever-growing presence of AI initiatives. With that, I'll hand the baton over to Mike, who will lead our discussion today on test automation. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you very much, Angus. Welcome, everyone. So we're going to obviously be going through automated testing today and do a brief demo of new products that are available. But the first question that always comes up is, why should we do automated testing? I'll get into some of the testing scenarios, but it's important to understand automated testing provides more than just the ability to run these tests, but it makes that running of these tests extremely regimented. It allows you to run those tests more often, which gives you additional value out of it. And it also allows you to test a wider swath as time goes on of your system to make sure that you don't run into problems in production as you're releasing to production. One thing that is important to note, there's a very broad set of activities that should occur along with the automated testing in and of itself. Automated testing is not a magic bullet that's all of a sudden going to fix all of your testing woes. You do still need to plan it. You need to have strategy that goes with it. You need to be adjusting it as time goes on. So, it plays a very important part. It gives you the most value out of these other activities, but conversely, these other activities give you the most value out of automated testing. So talking about where you would utilize automated testing, we're all very familiar with the fact that Microsoft is updating multiple times a year. You're required to take 2 updates a year at this point. And so every 6 months, you should be running a full regression suite on everything that you have going out there. That's a lot of work in some organizations, especially if you have a very broad footprint, process footprint within Dynamics, within D365 or CE or any of the products that you're testing. So this is the use case, again, that's most often pointed to as we're going into automated testing as why you should do it. And that's great. The problem that this particular item has with automated testing is it only gives you value once every 6 months out of your automated testing suite. The rest of the time you work to keep it up and bring it out. The value is very high, don't get me wrong, but it is a much harder business case to make as you're going through there. It's very important. The changes to automated testing that have occurred in recent times and the capabilities of the various tools have allowed us to pull that automated testing forward into the implementation process. I'll show you a little bit later, again, with one of the newer tools, that it's much easier to create tests. It's much easier to maintain tests than it's been in the past. The reality is we should be pulling forward all of this testing early in our implementations. Most of us are running sprint-based implementations. Frankly, we should be recording our tests every sprint, running a regression every sprint. And what this allows us to do, I'm sure everybody on the phone has seen this, you get to SIT and all of a sudden something you did in sprint number 1 was broken somewhere down the line and you haven't tested it since sprint number 1, which means all of a sudden you're fixing things very early in SIT. Automated testing can allow you during that to run regression every sprint, make sure that you're getting your functionality ready for that SIT process, and also making sure that you are getting the most out of the people on the ground, and you can leverage those tests afterwards to have a regression suite in place. So, it does reduce the overall testing effort, because if you manually attempted to test all of those things, most of the time that's one of the first things that goes away when the time gets crunched down and people aren't able to get everything done. It definitely also increases the quality outcomes because you're testing consistently every single time you run. And as I mentioned, it also reduces that rework. So you're not redoing work far down the line trying to remember what it was that was supposed to happen or figure out where the problem is from a very large set of functionality that you've implemented in the interim since you did your initial piece of the implementation. It allows you to catch it quickly. It allows you to reduce the amount of work necessary to fix it and focus down much better. As I mentioned, there are other places that we've been thinking on how you can utilize automated testing. One of them that has never really been much of a discussion around automated testing is when we do large-scale configuration changes in the system. For example, construction companies setting up a new project, or if you're a retail company setting up a new store. These are very complex, long configuration cycles. And by having automated testing, what it allows you to do is actually test the entire process end to end and be sure that all of your configurations are correct. They're giving you the correct and expected outcomes, things of that variety, before you actually get into putting those into production. And that means you're not spending time chasing down and then going back and fixing the problems that might have been caused because you didn't have the opportunity to do a full test suite on that configuration before it comes out. Not just, again, the individual configuration itself, but everything around it, everything that feeds it, everything that comes out of it onto the other end. So just like this, there are a lot of other ways that are being thought about for automated testing, a lot of other use cases, but the ease of upkeep, the ease of managing, and the ability to run that automated testing often is really changing the way it's viewed and changing the value proposition around automated testing. So, we talked a little bit about the direct value in automated testing. It does reduce the testing effort overall. So you can run 10 regressions and you're really not using as much. You're only rerunning the tests that fail rather than manually running every test that's out there. It also can help in ERP systems, even if you only have testing set up within your ERP system, because it allows you to fully test the ERP system when a new system starts feeding it information, when it's in implementation, things of that variety. It gives you that opportunity to be sure that truly end-to-end, not just end-to-end within the other system you're implementing, is done. So again, another opportunity for very direct value to be gotten out of automated testing. But that increase in testing scope also brings or testing frequency also brings a lot of indirect value to automated testing. And that indirect value is tied around fixing the problems that show up in production. So we've all had the case where we get a call in, the middle of the day that we have bad numbers somewhere, and then it's not just the time to figure out what the problem is, fix the problem, put it back into production. But on top of that, you have a lot of people that are working to try and work around the problem until such time as you have a fix into place. And then more importantly, you have to go back and fix all of the entries that were made as that problem existed in some cases, because it allowed it to pass through. It just didn't give the right answer at the end of the day. So automated testing can really help avoid those things before they ever get into production to be a problem. And it ends up lowering overall. So this is very much an indirect value. It's hard to quantify because it really only happens when you have a problem and all you're doing is avoiding those problems, but it's important to know. So we are going to get into a testing application right now. Next 365 does work with Elevate 365. It is a newer testing platform that has been brought forward by Microsoft. It does cover all web-based. So while it is centered around Dynamics 365, and that is all Dynamics, both ERP and the CE products, it can be used on any web-based application and integration, and there are additional extensions being put into place to handle Windows applications as well and allow other applications to be tested in there. So, it is very straightforward to implement. I'm going to go through creating a couple of steps within a test case to show you that here in just a couple of moments, but it's no longer a developer tool. It's no coding required. It's very much a tool that is within reach of any users of D365, at least to do the initial creation of the test case. Because there are a lot more testing applications on the market, pricing models have come very far down from where they had been in the past. And this is also an important piece of that price value. The other things that are important to know, it is integrated with Azure DevOps. So you're able to run your tests out of DevOps, get the results within DevOps, and then review those results and report on them in a way that a lot of organizations are already doing from their own test suites within DevOps. And then because, again, you're able to test more and more quickly, you're able to test a lot of security that you might not have been able to get to all of the pieces of previously. So you can test your security roles. You can test both the system and the security roles as you're going through, which is best practices. So I am going to go into the Elevate product. Just give me just a moment here. Okay. So this is the screen you're going to see when you come into the Elevate product. Elevate does use single sign-on, so it has the capability to get in and do that sign-on as you're as you're working through with just your Microsoft, the same one that you use when you go into Dynamics. So your ability to log in, it's very straightforward. Once you're invited, you're able to go in and do the work within this. You have a list of test cases that, again, you have the capability of creating folders to put those into, to group them together properly. The other things on this front screen that you're going to see are components. Components are just grouped test case steps. So if I've got a bunch of test cases where I, for example, am starting with going in and creating a new sales order, then you're able to create a set of test cases that goes through the menu item and goes to that new sales order. And then on your subsequent test cases, you can just bring that component in instead of having to redo that piece of the work over and over again. So this can be an enhancer, especially as you broaden your testing scope. Variables is just what it sounds like. Variables is a place for you to store information that can be passed both within the test. So for example, if you create a sales order, you're able to grab that sales order number if it is auto-generated within your system and pass it on to another test so that it can be checked and used to test end-to-end scenarios. And then I talked about security earlier. You've got authentication that you can do from this. You can add additional users, and when you create a test, you're able to run it with additional users. So right now, I'm going to start with creating a new test case here. And it doesn't take a lot to create a test case. You do select which user you're running the test case on. This can be changed later, but it is certainly out there. There's also the ability to set templates as you're going through things of particular test cases that you might want to start off with and make modifications to, rather than starting and having to re-record the entire test. So I'm going to create this test. So notice it's got Microsoft Login with MFA as the start point on this. That Microsoft Login with MFA is extremely important. We can log in again through multi-factor, so we're able to use Authenticator and other multi-factor capabilities to be able to run these tests, and also to log in with those users. So when you run it, it opens up a virtual browser, and most of the work is done within this virtual browser. Again, there is, just like any application, there are certain things that you will need to know as you're running through these pieces. They are important to recognize as you're running through that. Some, people have to have at least a familiarization with how to record these test cases. There are certain things you need to stay out, be sure you're out in front of, such as being sure your screen is in the right position for the test case step that you're running. If you record it from end to end, it's not a big deal, but as you continue to work through things and you stop and you work in the middle of a test case, you have to be sure your screen is in the right position for that test case for where it's at a particular time. So as you can see, it's running this out of the Authenticator app. Sometimes it's a little bit slow to enter this code, and the only reason for that is, as you know, the code counts down within the Authenticator app. So if the code counts down to the point within the Authenticator app that it is not, it's close to refreshing, the application actually waits to be sure it doesn't have a login failure while you're doing that. So that's why it can occasionally be a little bit slow to log in, and just be aware of that. So as you can see, it brings you to your dynamic screen. You're logged in as the user that was associated with the particular test case when you created it. So you've got a couple of different options here. You can go through and create a series of just manual steps as you're going through and fill in the information that's associated with it. This tends to be a much more advanced way to go about, and you'll likely utilize this if you're modifying test cases. You'll go in and add a click or things of that variety. But this is really where the power starts to come in, is utilizing this enable recorder function. So when you enable the recorder, it allows you to just click on the screen and record your actions. Notice it turns these red. It adds steps as you're going through. So it allows you to just run through your test. It allows you to just click on the pieces where you want to be able to create your new test. I don't have this set up to automatically create, but it will allow you to enter in all of that information. Now, again, if you're entering in fixed information, it's not very helpful. So I talked earlier about variables. I'm going to stop this right here. I spoke earlier about variables. We have the ability to go back into these test cases And rather than utilize a fixed value, utilize a variable inside of that. So what will happen is whatever value is in that variable will end up being put into this particular test when I run it into that value. So a couple of other things. I'm not going to record any further on this test because we're very limited on time. A couple of other things that are important to note that are newer is the ability to both add steps in the middle along with run individual steps and run up to a point and from a point while you're running that test. So if I go in here and run a particular test, run a particular step, one of the challenges that occurred, and I mentioned this earlier, is it wanted to put that information into customer account. It selected customer account. It added that information in from the variable as we went. And I'm able to test, again, that individual test case. I'm also able to test everything prior to it. Or if I run into a failure, stop at that point, adjust my test step, run the test step, determine it's running correctly, and then continue because I can run from that step forward. So this makes it much faster to debug, much faster to change these test cases than have been the case in the past. A few other things I would like to make note of that are relatively new. AI is baked in to this particular product. And what that means is a couple of different things. We have the ability to run AI prompts throughout the process here. One that is extremely useful is this verify utilizing AI. One of the things that is a challenge is if you have a report that prints, for example, to PDF or something of that variety, the ability of testing suites to be able to look at that report and make a determination whether it is correct has always been a challenge. Utilizing Vision AI, they've set it up so that you can set a verification step to look at that report and determine whether the value in the particular spot that you're looking for is indeed correct. So a couple of other things to note. You have scenarios. You are able to string together a set of test cases in here and be able to run them. That's normally how you would run them as end-to-end tests. You also have levels of testing or levels of results, I'm sorry, that come out through the process. It shows the work is done. It shows whether it has passed. It has shown whether it has failed. I mentioned AI earlier, and I'm running out of time, so I won't run the test case. But as you can see, I created a test case that I designed specifically to fail. So when you click into a result, what it's going to do is it's going to show you the test steps that have run. When you've done it on a recent time, we haven't managed this video to hold them for an extended period of time, but it will show you the video of what it is that actually happened in those times. And in these steps, this third step, it failed and it showed why it failed. It could not be located. AI now will run in the background and make a determination if it can fix those test steps. So if, for example, Microsoft changes the customer number field to all of a sudden be something else, or changes new to create, the AI in the system will make a determination that this is probably what you want. It will make an adjustment and give you the opportunity to see where that failure occurred and also to determine whether you keep that update. The other thing that's important to note is if it ends up in 3 steps within the test case, continuing to go back to that AI to try and fix the test case, it will stop fixing the test case because it recognizes that there's a major problem going on. So these are extremely important scenarios that will allow the system to get through minor changes on the front end that previously would spur people going in and having to make wholesale changes throughout their entire application. Again, in general, Microsoft has been good about this, but this also will allow you to test ISVs. It will allow you to test customizations within your Dynamics platform. And all of those cases, you have the potential that those types of changes occur because it's not centrally controlled by Microsoft as well as it might be otherwise. And therefore, it better allows you to continue testing and know where it's been fixed and where it's been adjusted and make decisions around that. So just a couple of final thoughts. Again, mentioned it's no longer implementation. It's no longer just the every 6 months. There's a serious change to what the ROI factors are with automated testing. So it's important to consider and understand what these new views around automated testing are and bring it to as many places as you possibly can. There are a lot of tools out there right now. Microsoft has had RSAT. I think they're talking about deprecating it again. They've talked about it numerous times. The ability, free is never free. The maintenance is a lot higher, a lot more difficult on these systems than it is with something like Elevate. And these tools don't carry the same cost as we've always had in the past. So it really does change that ROI reflection. So these are all things to consider, all things to understand, talk with people that have worked in a lot of different areas with it so that they can discuss what your ROI looks like and help you build that business case around why automated testing is going to work for your organization. Angus?
Yeah, thank you very much, Michael, for the engaging conversation around test automation and the demonstration this morning. I just wanted to take a pause and give folks an opportunity to ask questions. We do have a few minutes left. So please feel free to type a question in, or please feel free to ask. Well, Mike, if we don't have any questions this morning, maybe what we can do is just proceed to oh, there is a question just popped up. Let me just get the question. Mike, can you give a broad concept on the cost?
So direct cost for licensing really comes down to which products you're utilizing from an Elevate standpoint. Um, Previously it was tied to the number of, for example, the number of users or the number of test cases you were running, things of that variety. Elevate's, at least licensing costs, are tied very directly to the products that you're leveraging and how many integrations potentially you are running. One thing that Elevate does provide is also a top-end cost that is tied to what they call their enterprise license. That's for all intents and purposes an unlimited license as you're working through that process. So Elevate has pieces around that. The cost these days, I used to hear costs from some products running up into the $400,000 or $500,000 a year range. The Elevate costs run somewhere between 10 and 15% of that total comparatively to what has happened in the past. And again, it's not tied to users. You can have as many users in it as you want to. So that allows you to push it down for your initial testing, for example, for your initial recording down to your business users who really know how they use the system the best. And it also doesn't count the number of test cases that you run or how often you run them, meaning you could literally run this every evening if you wanted to and have a regression test suite checking it every day, where you just come in and check it in the morning and see what the outcome is. So the costs comparatively are extremely nominal to what they have been in the past.
Got two more questions now, Mike. I have a question here. Does this also work together with CE? So if you have both environments and there is a sync between these two, can you use this test automation?
Yes, every CE product is included in the license, or there is a licensing cost. Again, we just discussed that, but every CE product, this will work with that. And as I mentioned earlier on, the product will work with other web-based applications. To be fair, most enterprise applications these days are going in this direction. So it can be used to, for example, run a screen in another application to kick off an integration in the middle of a test scenario, things of that variety. But yes, it is tied very deeply into all of the CE applications, whether that is, or all the CRM applications, whether that's CE or CI or field services, things of that variety. So it will work with all of those.
And we have one more question, Mike. Does it also work in a full custom developed screen?
Yes, 100% it will work. Again, it will work from a web application standpoint. So even a homegrown web application you might be using, it could be utilized. But within either FNO or CE, it is looking at the underlying information associated with the form itself. And because it's utilizing the framework that's associated with either CRM, the CRM platform, or with finance and operations, it can be utilized to test any custom elements on a screen or fully custom screens. And that's the reason it can be utilized for ISV testing as well, because a lot of those ISV screens are fully custom screens.
I have another question, Mike. Is the warehouse app of FNO also supported?
So again, the warehouse app can be run through a virtual warehouse app within the browser, and the ability to do that will allow the testing to be done through that virtual warehouse app. So yes, it can be tested.
Terrific. I'm just going to check one last time to see if we have any more questions. I think with that, Mike, we can just go to the last slide. I think the first thing I want to do is just to thank everybody for joining us today on this brief conversation around test automation and taking a look at Elevate 365. It's only 30 minutes this morning. And so what I would say to the group on the webinar today is, if you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Or if you'd like to dive deeper with any of our experts that are focused around testing readiness, we would be more than happy to have a conversation or schedule a deeper demonstration. My email here is on the screen, angus.cowan@next365group.com. And so with that, we will leave it today for our conversation around test automation. I want to thank you everybody for joining us, and have a wonderful day.